what is happening in scaling innovation in these corporate organizations, this lens of flow is really important. And I believe that it is how you reduce the level of risk and all types of risk. And that's what I'm going to talk about next, is really about how do you look at innovation as a flow of ideas, and reduce risk. So if you think of innovation as this squiggly line, right, where it starts from high level of ambiguity to high level of clarity and focus, you can think of, as we start, as designers, we start and we say, okay, first we do, because we don't know a lot of things, we say we're going to define the need, we're going to define the problem, and then formulate what to build based on what's desirable, feasible, and viable, right? That's the premise of design thinking. Then we go to the next level where we know a little bit more about what to build. We say, okay, we're going to start by experimentation through prototyping, getting feedback, iterative design process. Instead of big design upfront, we say we'll do break it into pieces and do small, quick learn, build, measure kind of thing. And that's the premise of lean startup, right? And then as we get more, aligned to those things, then we go into development, which is more about agility, flexibility, adaptability during that process. And so we are saying that using small batches instead of big, we can deconstruct the whole idea into smaller pieces, and then we create what is called the MVP. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. It's the minimum viable product, so that we can go more quick and get customer feedback and then move from. So as you can see, what I just went through is really looking at each of these philosophies and putting it into how we can reduce risk from one stage to the other. Another way to think about it is, okay, in the early part, we are trying to reduce market risk, because we are trying to say, make sure that the idea or the solution is desirable by the people and it has some market viability into outside. The second part, we could think of it as a business risk, right? We are trying to make sure that it's business viable for the business, and it has some kind of a business model that we can position, right? And then the last one, obviously, is the technical risk. Not to say that they are linear processes. I'm sure you can. It's very important to think about business risk and technical risk when you're talking about market risk. But more or less, this is how kind of you can think about reducing risk as you become more and more clear about the idea. This is one way of looking at different methods and how the role of the designer actually shifts as we think about design thinking, in the early part of the process to, really testing and building the business case, and then looking at the development side of things. Actually, I have written an article which I'll share at the end of it, where I deconstructed each of these buckets to think about what are the questions we need to ask, and then what is the role of the designer and how the role of the designer shifts. And what has happened in a lot of companies, obviously the role of design has shifted, right, from classical design to thinking about computer system computation design to really business design. But a lot of organizations don't really understand that as well. And I think this is where designers need to come and say, we are going to help you define what kind of design is needed at each stage, and it's different. In the early design stage, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of concept prototyping, and different level of low fidelity prototyping, right? And as you get into the lean startup or this middle stage, is you're not talking about testing and developing business models. You're trying to think about all this. So the role of the design shifts as you move from one high uncertainty to high certainty or confidence.